You remember that example I gave a few days ago about the mother who bought the white tablecloth, who has those six kids who every night they gather around it and eat a meal. And these kids are very messy. So she bought this Scotch Guard and puts it on the table so that as much as they spill and make a mess, that it does not penetrate that Scotch Guard and that tablecloth remains white. Well, let me give you a little backstory to that. See, this mother had tried Scotch guards after Scotch guard, everything she could think of in the past. She's gone through probably about 200 tablecloths. I mean, they last maybe about a week before she gets another one. So one day she was on her phone and she saw this ad for this Scotch guard. And apparently, it was the best Scotch guard ever made. Now, she is just searching and searching. She wants to find this Scotch guard, and she finally finds it. Now, the only thing, this Scotch guard is $100,000. She doesn't have the money, but she wants this Scotch guard. So, what does she do? She sells her jewelry set, which included a ring, necklace, and bracelet that her great grandmother has passed down through the generations. It was very close, very dear to her, but she gave it up to get this Scotch guard. Now you're like, Ivan, that's ridiculous. Well, just follow me in the text. Romans 6:1. So we have just finished Romans 5. What is Romans 5? Paul's like, look, you're justified by faith. These are the results. You're no longer enemies, so on and so forth. And he says the foundation of this is the obedience of Christ. By one man's obedience, you are made righteous. And you're like, wait, if it's by his obedience to the law and not mine, why do I have to keep the law? And he says the law came in that sin might abound, but where sin abounded, grace abounded much more. So you're like, okay, now Paul, I'm with you. No matter how much I sin, no matter how much sin is in my life, if I have faith in Jesus Christ, that sin cannot penetrate this divine Scotch guard, as you will. It cannot penetrate the righteousness of God on me. No matter how much I sin, no matter how much sin tries to climb up that hill, grace sits at the king of the hill because Christ sits as the king of the hill. So grace is on top of that hill. And no matter how much my sin tries to climb up that hill, no matter how much Satan, no matter how much the demons try to climb up that hill, it cannot knock grace off the throne because grace reigns. So Paul, I get it. No matter how much I sin, it doesn't matter because grace is reigning and sin will not penetrate the righteousness of God that is on me. I mean, even David said, sin is not imputed to me. It's not put on my account. But Paul, this is amazing. That means I can just continue in sin. And not only that, the more I sin, the more God's grace abounds. I mean, so I can just continue in sin because it's going to magnify the grace of God, right? I mean, this is awesome. I can do whatever want. I can live however I want and have a sure hope of going to heaven. I can live however I want. It doesn't matter. I'm at peace with God. I have access to him. So anytime I sin, I can just go in and say, hey, I sinned. I messed up. Thank you for your righteousness, which clothes me. And I can go back out and sin again and come because I have bold access before him. I mean, look, this is an amazing thing, Paul. Man, why didn't you explain this to me more before? I've been out here struggling with my sin, mourning over my sin, hating my sin. I mean, I feel like I cannot win. I feel like I'm in bondage to sin, but Paul, you've just freed me up to live however I want. This is amazing, Paul. But Paul's like, you don't understand. So we come to chapter 6. He says, what shall we say then? So Paul himself raises the question because he knows with what he's been teaching that the natural mind of man would raise this question. Hey, you're telling me I'm saved by the obedience of Christ? I'm made the righteousness of Christ. Sin can't do anything about it. The more I sin, the more grace abounds. So I can just go on and sin. This is amazing. He knows the human mind because he's a simple human being just like me and just like you. So he says, what shall we say then? Shall we continue in sin that grace may abound? Now, we're not going to get past there today, but let me take you back to my example. You say, that was ridiculous. Of course it was ridiculous. No one is going to pay $100,000 for some Scotch Guard, for a white tablecloth. No one is going to sell jewelry that's been handed down generation after generation that is very, very close to the heart for some Scotch Guard to protect the table from the spills of their children. Yes, I get it. But the point is, if the kids, knowing this, knowing what their mother did, knowing her great sacrifice, knowing the great price that she paid, if they just come to that table and they're just spilling and spilling, they're doing it on purpose. They're throwing the food on the table. They're putting the muddy hands on the table. They're just doing all this on purpose. They're like, oh, it doesn't matter. It has Scotch Guard. Nothing can penetrate this Scotch Guard. And the mother comes in the room. How do you think she feels? Do you think she feels loved? Do you think she feels respected? Do you think she feels any of those things? No. She feels like the kids disrespect her. They disregard her sacrifice. She's told them about what she did so they can have this tablecloth. She feels like the kids give no care about her. They don't love her at all. They're just disrespectful, taking this for granted. Now, I want you to transfer that to the spiritual reality. God has paid an infinite price of his son to purchase this grace, this gift of grace to be given to you, this gift of righteousness, the righteousness of his very son. He paid an exceedingly great, infinite price for this. And you're going to just disregard everything God has done for you? You're just going to cast it aside like it's nothing? You're just going to take advantage of this gift, take it for granted? You're just going to disrespect God like that? You have no fear of God. Do you have any love of God? Do you not realize what he did for you? Do you not realize he sent his son, his only begotten son? He sent Jesus Christ from heaven. Jesus Christ was worth more than 10 billions of universes. And he sent him into this world to live a perfectly righteous life. Do you think that this was no sacrifice on God's part? He paid an exceedingly great price. And we're already out of time. So we'll continue this. But shall you continue in sin, that grace may abound, Christian? What's Paul's answer? Certainly not. God forbid. May it never be. Do you not realize what God has done for you? Do you not realize this, Christian? Do I not realize what God has done for me? Shall we just disregard the sacrifice of Christ, disregard the love of the Father. Remember, God demonstrated his love for us, and while we were sinners, Christ died for us. Are we going to disregard that love? Are we going to take that love for granted? Christian, shall we continue in sin that grace may abound? Certainly not.